jumpin', yeah. This that jumpin', start like 23. This that jumpin', 2-4 like Kobe. This that jumpin', shoot my shot, then beat. This that jumpin', right around smoke my trees. This that jumpin', start like 23. This that jumpin', 2-4 like Kobe. This that jumpin', shoot my shot, then beat. This that jumpin', right around smoking my trees. I be ballin' in music like Kobe. I'm the greatest to ever do it, they don't know it.
What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Turtles Take right here on the Undefeated Sports Network. I am Tarbill. To my left, as always, is my guy Turtle. Vince, it's been a while, man. How we doing?
Man, I'm good. It's been way too long. I'm just excited to be back. You know, we had some stuff go on, but we're on the other side of it now, and we're back and ready to roll.
Oh, absolutely, man. I've been missing this. We got a lot to talk about since we last joined each other. I mean, the Bears have been going crazy, total rebuild mode, and obviously the Bulls have been still doing their thing. I'm most excited for what's coming up with the Bears here in free agency. Free agency's coming to a close, but with the draft coming up especially, I'm excited to see what this team goes after and see what Poles does with his first draft. So it's going to be interesting to see what these Bears have up their sleeve. I personally think they're going to go into the first round and get Justin Fields' former teammate and trade up to do so, but we'll talk about that more in a little bit. With that being said, we got a huge show for you guys coming up tonight. We got Dan Goodwin joining us at 7:15 here, and then we have Lester Wiltfong Jr., our guy from Windy City Gridiron, joining us at 7:45. Should be a good time. We'll have lots of Bears talk, and we'll have lots of Bulls talk. Sure to be a great show. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it, man. I want to go off the tangent right now and say this Bulls team, since we last talked, man, as ugly as some of the wins have been, they've still been getting it done. And I'm really impressed with where this team's at overall. I think only the future is to come, and I'm thinking this team's going to be deep in the playoffs if healthy. What's your thoughts, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, you know, they've definitely missed Lonzo a lot, and you know, and he had the setback in his rehab. They shut him down for a week to 10 days. You know, hopefully he can come back for the playoffs. If not, I mean, with given the extra playing time, Io has really, really taken a lot of steps forward that you would hope he would, and then some, especially, you know, some feel like they got a gift with him falling to them in the second round.
You know, absolutely.
Call it what you will. Maybe it's karma for, you know, the Derrick Rose injury. They get another, you know, Illinois, Chicago's son. You know, he went to Illinois, and now he's playing for the Bulls. Right. He looks really good. Patrick Williams has been cleared and returned, so that was nice to see him return against the Raptors. Other than that, like you said, you know, it hasn't always been pretty, but despite losing Zach for a while and different things, they continue, you know, they've gone on a few losing streaks, but they continue to keep their heads up and play hard no matter what. And I think that's the important thing. You know, not that there's moral victories, but when you can play hard against the best teams, even if you don't come out with a W, when you're a young team and you're still early in the whole chemistry process, you know, AK and Billy Donovan got to like what they've seen so far out of this team. And like you said, if they get healthy, there's no reason to see why this team couldn't go on a deep playoff run.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously that's the key, right, is having that young core healthy, especially with Lonzo. But as you touched on a little bit there, Io has been phenomenal over the last stretch. I mean, he's really stepped up, and as you said, he's been really a steal for this organization in the second round.
Yeah, he definitely has. You know, you take what he did at Illinois, and he's taking those steps now in the NBA, and you see he's not afraid to play against anybody. His defense especially has been another bright spot for this team because the team plays good defense. We
Yeah,
get
which is
Williams back out there, and then Io playing his defense. It makes up for some of the guys that don't play really good defense. Kind of gives Billy a good combination to go with as to game. When he needs more defense, he has the guys to go out there and put out there.
Yeah, and that's what I was just going to say. You would have thought at the beginning of the season that defense was going to be a weak point for this team, right? Initially coming out, I mean, other than Williams, there were still a lot of questions as to what we would look like defensively this year.
Yeah, I mean, getting Alex Caruso obviously leading that defensive unit, but you got guys like Caruso and Patrick Williams, and even Tristan Thompson has played better, defensively than he has in years past. When you get guys who do that, especially when it's guys who are like Caruso and Patrick Williams, who's a core of this team anyways, you're not losing anything when you have to go to them. If you go to whatever lineup where you have to have Caruso and Patrick Williams on the floor at the same time, you're not losing anything. Patrick with the one thing I hope to see is that Patrick gets a little more aggressive offensively. He seemed like he was working on that. He worked out with the G League during his rehab, and he worked on that, being aggressive offensively, and now we'll see how that fits in as he learns how to play alongside DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine and guys like that, especially DeRozan, who he only played with for a few games before he wound up getting hurt.
Yeah, and that's going to be key, right, is getting that chemistry back and being able to play with guys like DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Caruso, and Ball on a regular basis. I mean, there's not a lack of shot takers on this team.
No, there definitely isn't.
The ability for them to distribute the ball, and really share, not be over aggressive at any one position has tremendously helped them down the stretch. And, we saw it when Zach was out there for a while with COVID and everything. The ball was still being distributed really well. And obviously that's the number one priority when it comes to a point guard. But at the same time, DeMar DeRozan and these other guys aren't afraid to pass. They're not afraid to take that selfless pass and, not concerned with padding their own numbers. Although DeRozan did have some phenomenal games there.
Yeah, he had a stretch, man, where he was 35 points a game at 50% shooting. I think that's the other thing that you mentioned about, the ability to distribute. I think this team does a really good job, and it's got to start. Obviously, it starts with AK, and it goes to Billy Donovan and then onto the team. But they do a really good job of checking their egos at the door. DeMar DeRozan came in, and it could have been really messy. And I think a lot of people thought it was going to be. And in fact, I think that's why DeMar DeRozan was voted the worst offseason move in basketball, was the Bulls signing DeMar DeRozan. And I think a lot of that was people who just assumed that Zach and DeMar wouldn't be able to play together. There wasn't going to be enough basketballs for everybody. And obviously Lonzo for a while, and now other guys, they all have done a really good job of making sure that the ball is in both their hands. And I think the two of them have to get a lot of the credit. They talked about the trade deadline, about making this move or making that move. And I think it was DeMar DeRozan that came out and said, look, you're telling me that between now and the end of the season, we're going to get Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, and Patrick Williams all added to this team. I like where we're at. I'll take that as a shot. And I think that goes a long way. I think us fans see the same thing. And, anybody who watches this team sees how hard they play now. And you add guys like Caruso and Ball and Patrick Williams, they're all grind guys. They're all those guys that are going to go do the dirty work. So when you got guys that are willing to do that, and then you got DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine still to put the ball in the basket, I think, they check a lot of the boxes that you look for. I'm not saying they're going to win a championship this year, but they're a team that checks a lot of the boxes you hope for, and a team that can compete for a title.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. Even if they don't win a title this season, obviously that's the ultimate goal going into every season, is get all the way there and win the chip. But at the same time, I don't think that, this team makes it into the playoffs. They get into the second round and they play a tough team. If they lose, I don't think that's going to tarnish the reputation that this team has. Obviously, we'd like to see it as Bulls fans. It's been a long time since we've had a championship for the Bulls here in Chicago. But realistically, man, I think as long as you see this team taking steps in the right direction, you got to be happy with the progress that's being made, right? It's only year one with this group. So, yes, obviously Vooch is a little bit on the older side. I'd say that, mid 30s is
Right.
old when it comes to being an NBA center, especially. And DeRozan's on the backside of his career, one
Right.
would argue. But at the same time, if you get 2 to 3 quality years out of these guys and you win one chip in the process, I think you can be happy. This isn't a dynasty that's been built like a lot of other super teams. As I always say, I'm not a big fan of the super team, the whole I can't beat them, so I'm going to join them mentality.
Right.
To a certain extent, yes, Chicago went out and got good free agents, but we're not building a super team here in this city. We're building a team of guys that are willing to work, grind, put that work in, and be selfless and play basketball.
Well, and it's a deep team. You look at a lot of the quote unquote super teams, and you see the Nets and Philly and the Lakers and some of these teams. They struggle at times because especially when you get to the playoff, that bench shortens, and now you really got to be able to count on 8 guys who can play all the time. And when you only got 5, and now you're not sure who those other 3 are. The Bulls, they're an 8 to 10 man rotation easily.
Right.
And then you've even got a few more than that. But when it shortens, when you get to the playoffs, you go from 12, 13 guys down to between anywhere between 8 and 10. They're a team that can play with 10. They're a team that can play with 8.
Right.
And when you've got a team who can rely on all 10 guys, that's how you make a deep playoff run, because you're constantly fresh. You're keeping everybody in there. If you're going against somebody like, let's just say you're going against the Nets, Patrick Williams is going to draw that Kevin Durant assignment. Then you go to somebody, let's just say Philly with James Harden. Well, Patrick Williams is going to grab that assignment too. He's like the Scottie Pippen of this team. He's going to get the best scorer on the opposing team every night will be Patrick Williams to guard, but he doesn't have to do it the whole game, right? Like as long as it's somebody that Alex Caruso can take over, they'll go back and forth, so they stay fresh because they don't have to guard him the whole game.
Exactly, and I think that's a really good point that you bring up. But before we continue on, we've got our first guest here in the green room waiting to join us. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and bring in our guy, Dan Goodwin III, and we'll keep chalking it up with him.
What's up,
Dan?
What's going on? How y'all doing?
What up?
Doing well, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, man. It's nice to be here. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, absolutely. We appreciate you joining us.
So as you heard while you were backstage there, we've been talking a little bit of Bulls here. And what's your feelings with this team right now, Dan? How deep do you think they're going to make it into the playoffs if everybody's healthy? And I guess what's your expectation? What will make you happy as a Bulls fan?
I think I'm happy right now. I'm happy right now. I don't think anybody went into the season actually leaving out of last season thinking that they Bulls would be able to turn it around as quickly as they have, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And a lot of people were down on DeMar DeRozan. I was like one of the guys that was like, yeah, that's a good find, right? That's a good pickup. They thought we paid too much for him and Lonzo Ball and Caruso. A lot of people were like, they're just all the same players, but they fit perfectly and they all bought into this system. So to me, I'm happy for what we have right now, and I see the future being bright. That being said, do I expect them to go far in the playoffs? Not with the current team that's assembled. And the reason I say that is because I believe we need another big man. Now, Pat Williams is coming back, but, let's be honest. Pat's playing out of position at the 4 anyway. He's really he's along the size of, he's a 3 really.
Right.
So we've been in this situation where we're playing Caruso at power forward or Javonte Green at power forward. Mm-hmm. These are guys that are 6'4", man, and it's I've tweeted it several times watching the game, and it's like, we got, the tallest guy on the court sometimes is 6'6", DeMar DeRozan.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, there's no way that we can compete inside. So the Bulls, they get beat up sometimes. And I think that's the biggest thing. They play hard, but when you're playing out of position, game in and game out, night after night after night, it starts to weigh on you heavily. You know what I mean? And you can't hold up. You can play that game, that small ball in spurts, but in the NBA over 82 games, there's no way you can hold up against that. So that's their drawback right now. If they can, get another big power forward, a legit power forward. A lot of people don't like to say it. I'm one of the only people that say trade Pat Williams and get a legitimate 4. And a lot of people don't like me saying that, and they're like, "No, Pat's the claw." And I mean, he's the paw, you might say, right?
Right.
And this and
The
that.
paw,
So,
yep.
yeah, Kawhi Jr. and all of that. So I mean, and he's a good player, and I take nothing from him. But the way the team is assembled right now, it's just hard having him play the power forward position, and he's been out too. So even then, it's been tough.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
I
has
think-
been tough with the lingering injuries, especially, and just not having this whole unit gel together
Right.
over the last, really 15 games or so. We've been dealing with injuries. So,
Man, since December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely been, one of those seasons where you saw right away what this team could do. And then to have pieces taken away piece by piece by piece, it's been a long season, but like you said, I think they're ahead of where we all were hoping they would be this year anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Tarble, we were all over the DeRozan thing. Even last season, we had said, look, if the Bulls can go add like a Alonzo Ball and a DeMar DeRozan, then maybe we could jumpstart everything. Everyone said, oh, there's no way they're going to go sign DeMar DeRozan. And then sure enough, that's what they did. But I think, to your point, it's a very unpopular opinion, but I agree. It's one that we agree with you. We've talked on this show about it to length about, trading Patrick Williams. You don't have that many assets that are worth what you're trying to do. And if that's who it is, then most likely it's going to be Patrick Williams. The only thing I said was I hope it's for somebody that's worth it. I don't want to see him trading like the whole Jeremy Grant thing. They were talking about him trading for Jeremy Grant. I said, well, really, you're hoping that Patrick Williams turns into Jeremy Grant. So if you can go get Jeremy Grant now, I'm all for it. But if it's for trading him for somebody who's 35 years old, that I'm not looking to do. But if they can go get another big, like you said, either a power forward or even a center that then moves Vooch down to power forward, either or, I'm definitely all for that. And I think you have enough, like you said, the other pieces. I think you have enough other pieces to go with everything if you can add that other big.
Right, absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head, man. When a lot of people were down on Nikola Vucevic, you know what I mean? But people need to realize too that he's playing out of position technically. Now in the NBA, a lot of guys can play center and things like that.
Right.
But Vooch is actually not that big, man. If you really look at him, a lot of people are looking at him. He's only 6'10".
Right.
So in many cases, he's really smaller than what most centers would be. 7 foot Joel Embiid and guys like that. Jokic, he's 7-footer. These are legit 7-foot guys. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Vooch is really playing a little bit smaller, but he can play it, and he's played it pretty much his whole career. So I'm cool with that. But the thing is, even if you got a power forward that doesn't, you don't have to have him be a stretch because Vooch can do that, right? So Vooch can step out and he can get on the perimeter sometime and stretch to they're not going to block each other out of the paint too much or clog that paint middle up. So if they can do that, I think it would be great, man. I think the only way, like you said, the only way you keep Pat Williams, or say no, we're not going to do it. You got to get a big somehow, some way, and if you hang on to Pat, then that means they're building for the future. If they go out and they trade Pat or something like that in the offseason, then that means they want to win right now. I think they don't want to do that. I don't think they want to do that, but we'll see, man. It's you never know what happens. You know what I mean? These guys, they look at the analytics and all of that type of stuff. I'm not a huge proponent of that, the plus minus thing. I like to see the court and see the guys in action, and what I see, I know my eyes aren't lying to me.
Yeah, because that whole plus minus thing is very misleading. Yeah. If I'm on the court and I'm the weakest of the 5, and we're blowing somebody's doors off, well, my plus minus is going to be great. Just because I'm on the floor doesn't mean I'm doing anything to contribute. Tony Snell, he's been a few different places since leaving here where you see him with a box score of 0-1-0-0-0 for 30 minutes. But his plus minus looks good because Milwaukee blew somebody out or, wherever he's at now. But,
Right.
so yeah, I definitely agree. And like you said, if you can get a power forward who can beat and bang down low, it doesn't interfere with Vooch because he's going to step out. He's going to play away from the rim. He's done a really good job this year at, several times where he's, you see him with 15, 17 rebounds because it's not really his game, but it just speaks to this whole culture that AK and Billy Donovan have put in place here where guys are willing to come in. We were speaking before you came on that these guys come in and they check their ego at the door. Yep. I think a lot of the reason everybody said DeMar DeRozan was a horrible signing for the Bulls was because they didn't think he could play well with Zach LaVine. But the two of them have done a really good job of playing off each other and not putting themselves before the team. And that goes to speak to Billy Donovan and as well as AK with the environment that they've got there and the culture of everybody doing what the team needs to win.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what it really boils down to, Vince. You hit the nail on the head there saying the culture that Donovan and AK have built here in Chicago. I mean, you look at where this team was not even 2 years ago, last season, prior to the acquisitions, and it's clear night and day difference what they've done and the culture that they've instilled in these guys. And, you see the conversations where DeMar would say, no, I don't want to take the last shot. Zach, you take it. And Zach would say, no, I don't want it. You take it. And that's the exact type of mentality that you need. Don't get me wrong. You need to be able to decide on who can take that last shot when it comes down to the wire. But these guys are selfless, truly in and out. And that's an amazing quality that's hard to build. And it's because of the culture that Donovan's instilled in this team that they are who they are and where they are right now, I would say. So,
and I knew how DeMar DeRozan would come in and act, right? And the reason I say that is because you can't play in San Antonio if you have an ego.
Absolutely.
He played in San Antonio. He didn't bother
and for a long time too.
For a couple years. So
right.
So you know what I mean. You knew what type of mentality he had. I just want to win. I want to hoop. I want to win. Right. And that's it. You know what I mean? And Zach was the guy who I thought, how's he going to react? Because this is his team. So if DeMar comes in, and then when DeMar came in and he started getting this shine and went on that scoring spree, you never heard a word from Zach. So it's like, Zach has that mentality too, where he's bought in. And that's a testament to Billy Donovan because all those guys, when they came in, Caruso, Lonzo Ball, DeMar DeRozan, they said they had a conversation with Donovan before signing the contract, and he laid out the plan of how he wanted to play. This is where I see you in this offense. This is where I see you in the defense. This is how we want to play basketball. And all of them were like, that's how I want to play ball. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So when you have that type of coach who's communicating like that with the players, man, I mean, these guys are bought in. So it's a good thing to see that. It's very good.
Yeah, it's crazy to think where this team was just, 2-3 years ago with beating our heads against the wall with, not even a real coach in there and wondering, is Zach even going to stay a Bull? Now we're talking, 2.5 years later, here we are. And they're, before all the injuries and everything came up, for a while, they had the top record in the league and in the conference, So like you said, it just goes to show the difference that a Billy Donovan can make.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. And as much as I would love to sit here and talk Bulls all night, we got to get some Bears news in.
Yeah, let's switch it up.
Especially he's wearing the Bears hat tonight. Moving forward, Dan, I got to know your thoughts and feelings first on the hirings of both Matt Eberflus and Ryan Poles. And, a lot of people are saying, oh, we got Matt and Ryan 2.0 making jokes. Although I think Matt Eberflus is a true upgrade at head coach over Matt Nagy. It's yet to be seen, but just the culture that he's talking already, it has me impressed. So I want to know your thoughts on those two, and then we can dive into what they're doing in free agency and what the plans are in the draft.
Man, my thoughts on first. I'll start with Poles. I think Poles was a good hire. When he came in at his press conference, his opening press conference introduction, you might say. He spoke about the culture. He spoke about discipline, and that's that's what I've wanted to see from Chicago,
Mhm.
because for the last 4 or 5 years we've been devoid of the culture in the locker room, the discipline. We got guys fighting on in playoff games, getting thrown
Right.
out of playoff. You know what I mean? Things like that were just happening far too frequently, right? You can get into a little spat with somebody, but the same guy to do damage and cause a problem with 3 different individuals on the team
Right.
consecutive years, that's a problem. You know what I mean? And we had
Javon
this,
Wims.
Javon Wims, Anthony Miller, you know what I mean? The list
Mhm.
goes on and on.
Yeah, exactly.
So, those were the things that I liked hearing from him. I also liked what he did with this situation with Larry Ogunjobi. A lot of people were down on him. Some of the beat writers around Chicago
Right.
were down on him, and I attacked them because I'm like, number one, don't come at the guy for he's been in there for 5 days basically.
Right.
The league year
Exactly.
started and it's 5 days into the new league year, right? And you go at this guy and say it was a rookie mistake and blah blah blah. He made this mistake. I don't think it was a mistake at all. I think it was good because if you listen to his opening, his introduction, once again, he said we're going to pay attention to physicals. We're going to pay attention to the medical reports and things like that. So when anybody that's reached out to in free agency or a trade or whatever transaction in the NFL or pros, any pro sport, it's always pending a physical.
Right.
So
Right.
you go take the physical. If you don't pass, the deal is void. It's done and over with. We move on to the plan B. And he was able to transition to plan B very quickly, which means that he already had it in place, right? It's not like he put all his eggs in that basket.
Right.
Right. So he was able to transition and move. And that was impressive to me.
Yeah, that's the key there, like you said, is having a backup plan. And, obviously, as you said, players have to pass a physical whenever they sign with a new team. It's standard procedure. Yes, they offered him a contract, but it was contingent on him passing that physical.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah, well, I think the Bears have become an easy target for people around the league. And I thought it was, it was low-hanging fruit for all the beat writers to attack him right away and say, "Oh, see, it's the same old Bears." Well, no, it's not. It's the different.
Right.
It's the exact opposite of what we're used to. Previous regimes, and I say regimes, not just the last one, but the last several, they would have just said, "Well, screw it, we're just going to sign him. He's too good to not to let out of our building."
Yep.
Well, what? He left the building. Everybody said, "Well, he won't last a day before he's signed by somebody else." Well, here we are, and he still isn't signed.
Exactly.
So obviously they knew something because now nobody else has signed him either. And we could keep doing the same thing. We keep running our head into the wall, bringing in guys who are hurt and guys that spend their first year here not even on the field because they couldn't get on the field when they got here. Now here we are being proactive. And like you said, to your point, he automatically right away just went the other direction. He had those backup plans in place, so it wasn't, I'm going to force this to fit. He said, and he stuck to what he said. Like you said, he said, we're going to be disciplined. We're going to look at physicals. We're going to watch these things. And right away they reacted. They did the hardest thing to do was exactly what they did. Yep. Most teams would have done the easy thing and just said, "Yeah, we'll just sign him and see, and he'll get on the field by opening day." Mm-hmm. Well, if that's the case and he really wants to be here, when he is healthy, he'll still be here.
He'll still be
so, I really like seeing what he's done. I thought it was a good hire. And I think to everything he's done from the time he was hired till now goes to show that he is running the show. He's not just a yes man that George is telling what to say and Ted and all these guys are saying, well, this is what we want to do, so we're going to do it. Everybody jumped right away and said, well, look, he was hired and tomorrow he's down to his final 3. Well, we talked about it in this show and it comes out. I think a lot of people talked about it. I very much think that list was his list. Mm-hmm. He said, okay, well, that's fine, but this is the guy I want. He went and got his guy. And that just shows this Bears team is going in the right direction. We have somebody who's leading the team and has a plan, right? We're not just, previous regimes throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. We have a plan. They have a map. They're doing the things they want to do. They're not just reacting. They're actually taking time to make good moves. Free agency, everybody right away, oh, they're not making any moves. Good. The Bears don't belong in that first opening free agency window. And I really like the transparency that he shows. We're used to this, oh, well, we have a collaboration here and we know it's in-house. he's actually going outside and say, look, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to be a big player in free agency. We're waiting for that 2, 3, and 4 tier of free agency because that's where we are. And they are. What's the point of going and signing somebody for big money when you're not ready to compete yet anyways? That was why it didn't make sense not to trade Khalil Mack, and they got out of the entire contract. I know a lot of people are upset that they didn't get better compensated for it, but they got rid of the entire contract.
That's the key. Yeah. That's the key. The key. There's probably a situation where, they would probably have offered a number one if the Bears took the bullet and ate some of that contract too. But since the Bears said, no, you take all $63 million with him,
right?
Then okay, well, we're gonna give you a 2 and a 6 for that,
right?
And so
and I can live with that.
Yeah, I can live with that too.
Absolutely
30 years old, he's still a beast. You know what I mean? We know that. But at the end of the day, you got from underneath that contract, you bid some of the dead cap, which is expected. But we still got $28 million right now in salary space, so we're good on that front. Something else about Poles, man. He said it at the outset, and you touched on it there, Turtle. The situation with free agency, he's not going to dive into free agency. If you're in that first wave of free agency, every single one of those players and Bears fans need to, around the globe, they need to know this. If you grab somebody in that first wave of free agency, you always overpay.
Mm-hmm.
Every single team has overpaid for those guys, and it's a rare situation that they work out, right? The days of Deion Sanders coming and making you a Super Bowl contender, or Charles Haley, or Darrelle Revis, you know what I mean? Those days are done, man. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen that often. You know what I mean? The biggest difference that we've seen, or situation where that's happened, is out in Tampa Bay, but that's the quarterback situation, and he basically had his choice of, he looked at the rosters and said, "Oh, they're loaded. Let me go. Let me go there." You know what I mean? So it's a whole different perspective. So
out there in Tampa Bay as well, Tom took a really team-friendly deal to keep those pieces around him.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit different situation. I mean, obviously we've got a second-year quarterback in Justin Fields that isn't making a crazy amount of money, but as he performs and as Montgomery performs, these guys are going to get contracts down the road. Montgomery, sooner than later, is going to have to be paid like a top tier back, in my opinion.
Well, I think the perfect place to look is Seattle. Seattle capitalized when Russell Wilson was on his rookie deal. That's why they were able to afford the Richard Shermans, the Cam Chancellors, the Earl Thomases, all these guys that went with him to help him win that Super Bowl. Then when that contract came and it came time to pay him, they paid him, and then they made a really, really bad trade for Jamal Adams.
Mm-hmm.
Very bad trade.
Like Dan said, we're not in the time of football where one guy is going to come win you a Super Bowl, and that's exactly what they thought was going to happen. And Jamal Adams has played really good since he's been there. Yeah. But by giving up what you gave up, it was impossible for him to live up to what you gave up. There was no way they could get even, and now it's resulted in Russell Wilson ultimately moving on to Denver. Mm-hmm. And all you could do is look back at those Jamal Adams where they gave up the multiple first-round picks to go get a guy that really has played really good, but not good enough for what they gave up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, segueing from the Bears just for a second, this has been something that I've wanted to talk about since the news broke. So, what's going on with Baker Mayfield, guys? Is he going to be a starter somewhere next season? I mean, man, for you to trade Deshaun Watson to the Cleveland Browns and not try to get Deshaun Watson as your quarterback in Houston, what does that say about you as an organization, for one?
I think he winds up in Seattle, honestly. I just think Seattle, they have Drew Lock. I mean, you have an old coach, they have an old team. You have guys that really you're trying to win, at least be respectable, and you're in a really tough division. I think it's easy to go get Baker Mayfield now. So I think I think that's where he goes. As you know, Tarble, I'm a Bears fan first, but secondly, I'm a Browns fan. So to see Deshaun there,
your opinion on it
was it's a rarity as a Browns fan. Being a Browns fan is like being a Bears fan, right? You just keep running your head into a wall thinking that you're going to win, and then something derails. So when the first team for him to come out and say he wasn't interested in was Cleveland, it was like, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. For them to him come around and say, well, we're going to Cleveland, you knew there had to be you're waiting for another shoe to fall. And it was the contract extension, not in years, but money. You're paying him $14 million more per year. And then you come to find out even another shoe falls that first year you're only paying him $1 million. So if he is suspended, he's not losing any money.
Smart business move by the organization.
Yeah, I mean, you were able. I do think they have enough pieces on defense that if he's young enough that if he's suspended this year, if he's not, you can compete. But as far as your question with Baker, you saw what the league thinks of him. He said, well, I really want to go to the Colts. And they said, cool, we're going to go trade for old-ass Matt Ryan.
37 years old.
You're right. We're going to go trade for him because we just don't want you.
Yeah. It's a tough situation for Baker Mayfield. And this is something that he brought on himself, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
I think the way he's handled himself in the locker room, guys are, half the team, some of them like him, some of them don't, type of situation. Just the way that he's gone about it, the manifesto that he wrote, a lot of people said that was a good look because, it put pressure on the Browns, but, that's a bad look. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Come out of nowhere and write that, to me, that didn't make sense. So, that's the situation that you have. I don't know who's going to take him because the Browns evidently, from what I heard, they're asking for like a number one pick.
That's what I heard. I read that too.
Nobody's going to give up a number one for him. Let's be honest. Look at what they did. Deshaun Watson, he hadn't even played a down on his new contract already.
Right.
$140 million.
Right.
So they said, you come here, we'll give you another $80 million. Basically.
Right. We're going to give you $14 more million per year than you're already getting.
We'll guarantee all of it, guarantee every last dime of it, because we don't believe in Baker Mayfield. So the writing is on the wall from the Browns, right? Other teams look at that and say, man, what could he possibly be doing in the locker room or in the practice field that lets them say, we'd rather go and take a chance on a guy who might get suspended for 6 weeks to a year, possibly, and then even give him $230 million guaranteed money. What is he doing? So those GMs, those guys, they all look at that stuff, man. I don't see where he's going to fit in. I think maybe somebody gets hurt during the season. Mm-hmm. Some top-notch quarterback gets hurt on a team that has a chance to make a playoff run, and they say, "Hey, bring Baker Mayfield.
He's better than what we have back there.
Let's see if he can hold it down right quick." You know what I mean, and things like that. So I think that's what you're looking at, man. He's going to have to rehabilitate his whole career, though.
Yeah, I think the most damning thing for Baker Mayfield is we've seen a lot of really bad teammates throughout the years where their teammates don't come out and talk against them. You don't hear this happens and that happens. You're not seeing that with Baker Mayfield. You're seeing, everyone has their own opinion of Odell Beckham. That's fine. But a guy like Jarvis Landry, who for his career has played with a lot of bad quarterbacks and hasn't said a word. He just shows up every day and he's ready to perform. He said, I want out. I don't want to be here. That was when they said, well, we might be, there's a possibility they trade for Deshaun Watson. He still didn't want to be there. Right. That just goes to show you how bad things really are. And then for, and whether it's unnamed or not, for somebody inside that front office to come out and say, look, we're just looking for an adult. We're looking for somebody who's a mature leader. Those are things you don't hear. You don't see teams and players come out and say those things against somebody. So to hear so many of them goes to show you how bad it truly is.
Yeah. And I think that, as you said, Vince, it's the combination of the lack of leadership being so vocalized. I mean, what leadership's a number one trait for a quarterback.
And honestly, this is really who we all knew Baker Mayfield was, right? Like, this is who he's always been. So, as we talk about previous regimes with the Bears, it's the same thing with the Browns. Previous regimes put Kevin Stefanski in this box. Mm-hmm. They went out and got Baker Mayfield when there were other options there, or there were chances to cut ties with them before this. And they said, no, this is our guy. We're going to win with him. Whatever it is, pride, stubborn, whatever, you've now put this organization behind. So now, we talk about it with the Bears. well, you have to give up what they did to get Justin Fields because of previous moves. Well, this was you had to give up what you did because when is your next opportunity to get somebody like a Deshaun Watson to say, yeah, I'll come to Cleveland? And you don't see those franchise quarterbacks in this draft, nor do they have a pick early enough to go get one.
Right.
So they did what they had to do. They said, well, if we're going to use our first round pick on a quarterback, it might as well be Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Which makes sense ultimately. I mean, because when all of this controversy, everything that's going on the side goes away, which it eventually will, even if he is suspended.
Right.
Deshaun Watson's a damn good quarterback, better than any quarterback you're going to get in the first round this year.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, honestly, when you talk about a kid who's, he's 26 years old, he's never played a down for the Cleveland Browns. And you're already talking about he's the best quarterback they've ever had.
That definitely says something.
How can you pass up that opportunity? You have, like we talk about all the time. At some point, you've gotten it wrong so many times. You have to get it right. And the only way to know you got it right is to go get a proven guy.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And what's funny is they're the same age, Baker Mayfield and Deshaun Watson, so they're not losing. Right. It's not like they're bringing in somebody that's 32 or 35 and you won't have them long. This dude can literally play for another 10 years, to be honest.
And I thought they made a really good move in going and signing Jacoby Brissett. If Deshaun's out, 6 weeks, even a whole year, at least you have a guy that can hold it down. No, you're probably not going to win a Super Bowl, but at least you have a guy that can hold it down and compete with what you have there. And everybody knows, like you said, this is the last step now. The suspension is it. It's the last step. So if it's 6 weeks, a year, whatever it is, once that time frame is over, he's going to be back on the field. Right. So, and look. His body hasn't taken hits for a year and a half. So, whatever it is, whatever everybody's opinion is, at some point you got to go out and get it right. And they did. The other thing I just want to touch on, Chris Ballard, you talk about the Colts and good GMs. He traded Carson Wentz for a third-round pick. I'm sorry, it was third round, right? And then he sent that to Atlanta for Matt Ryan. So he traded Carson Wentz for Matt Ryan and lost nothing.
Hey, that's a pretty good trade.
Those are good GMs. Those are the proactive moves that good organizations make.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Dan, before we let you go here, we do appreciate you jumping on with us. We'll have to do this again soon. Can you want to let everybody know where they can find you at on Twitter and a little bit about your pod?
Yeah, for sure. At 3 Kings of the Midway. Well, let me start with where you can find me at Dan Goodwin III, suffix the third. We do a podcast every week. Once a week, it's called 3 Kings of the Midway podcast, and we speak specifically about the Bears. So that's a cool thing. We just released a show actually yesterday. So it's up and it's available for everybody. We had some callers that call in sometimes. We'll be going live on there pretty soon, like you guys do, on Twitter and all of that type of stuff. So we looking forward to some of the things that it's holding. And our biggest thing, man, is that we don't always agree, right? We got 3 guys, myself, Devori, Nesby, and then, of course, Ill Will. We don't always agree on every topic, but we can speak respectfully, man, and we can talk about it. You know what I mean? And we like the interchange. Absolutely. We like the debate or whatever the case may be, because that's what sports is. It's all about.
That's where you get the best content too.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So
you'll have to look back at some of me and Vince's arguments about Mitchell Trubisky when he was still on the Bears.
Oh man. We had those same type of arguments too. I'm sure. I was in Trubisky's corner, and my other 2 co-hosts were like, screw Trubisky all the way around, right? So, it is what it is, man. I saw things a little bit differently, but we always talk about it. It's fun, man. We try to keep it as real as possible and give people the truth, man, because a lot of times people push these narratives and it's all based on what you like as a person. This guy, you know what I mean?
And everybody's agenda.
Man, just be real about it. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. We got another podcast that we're doing as well. It's called The Big and Bright Show. So y'all stay tuned for that. But I appreciate you guys having me on, man. Whatever I can do to help promote you guys.
Yeah, we definitely love having you on, man. We love just sitting back, shooting the shit, chopping it up about Bulls, Bears, whatever. You know,
That's
it's
what's up.
anybody who's got good takes. It's always fun to because, like you said, when everybody has the same take, the same opinion, what's the fun in that?
Yeah,
I could talk
Right.
to myself about that. I want to hear
exactly.
other people. You know, and sometimes you hear something, you're like, "Damn, you know, I never looked at it that
Never
way."
looked at it that way. Exactly.
Mhm.
You can change my opinion. I can
Right.
change yours, but it's just a
Absolutely.
matter of having an open mind about it. You know.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Again, Dan, thanks for joining us. We'll have to do this again soon, man.
Yeah.
Great conversation. And for those of you that are not following Dan, be sure to go follow him on Twitter and link up with what he's doing. Him and his team have some amazing work going on over
Yeah,
there. So
definitely.
we'll
That's
talk
it.
soon,
Go,
Dan.
go
Thanks again,
Cubs too. Go Cubs.
Yeah, let's go.
Absolutely. Man, talk about going from Bulls to Bears seamlessly. That was some great conversation with Dan.
Yeah.
Great guest, and we appreciate him taking the time to jump on.
Yeah, you know, it's always fun to get somebody who's, you know, loves sports like we do, right? Like, you know, you can't spell fanatic without fan, you know. So it's
Right.
it's nice to get those takes and those opinions from somebody who really studies the game like we do, you know. A lot of people just
Absolutely.
watch it, but we really study it, and it's fun to talk to somebody who does the same thing.
We didn't get a chance to talk about where the Bears are heading to in the draft with Dan, but we got our next guest here in the green room, and I'm sure he's got an opinion on what
And a
these
good
Bears
one.
are going to be doing
Definitely a good
when
one.
it comes to the draft. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and bring in Lester Wiltfong Jr. from Windy City Gridiron. What's up, Lester?
What's
How we doing
up?
tonight?
What's up, guys? How
I
you
feel
guys
like
doing?
Lester is like our official Bears guy.
I like it. I like it. Sounds good.
I feel like every time we really want to talk Bears, we bring Lester on.
Nice.
Absolutely. How you been,
How you-
man?
Good. How about you guys?
You know,
Been hanging
can't
in there.
complain.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Moving forward is all you can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hell yeah. So, Tarbo started with it. Where the Bears going? Second round, pick 39. Where are we going?
You know,
They're trading it.
there are a lot of needs, obviously, on this team. There's, corner, receiver, O-line, safety. I mean, you could really, throw a dart, but I think Ryan Poles from the few times he's talked about the draft, I think he's gonna go best player available. I think if there's a trade back there for him, he says he values trading back. He has a plan in place to trade back. If he has a group of guys that he's comfortable getting, he's going to weigh the options, the analytics, and if he can move back, still get one of his guys, he'll do it. I think that's something that the Bears need because, like I said, this roster has a lot of holes. So if you can move back a little bit, still get a top wideout, still get a top guard or tackle, you got to do it.
Right.
So there's no chance that they trade both of their second round picks,
Moving up
to go
I
get
don't see
Olave
it.
out of Ohio State.
I don't see
see
it
it.
just because of the needs. It's just because where this roster's at right now. There are only like 50 guys signed to the roster.
Right.
You got to have a 90-man, for the offseason. So if you're looking at about between the draft and the undrafted free agents, you're looking at about maybe 20 rookies. You just got 20 vets to sign. Ryan Poles can turn this entire roster over in pretty much in one offseason.
Mm-hmm.
So moving up in the draft, I don't think this is the time to do it. I love it. I think there's some really good, some real good receivers, offensive linemen you can move up for. But those two positions also have good depth. So stay where you are. Take the best guy that's waiting for you.
I think receiver is so deep that I really think that's where they wind up going with that 39th pick. And I just think there's going to be somebody there. Like at the very least, I think Christian Watson will be there at 39, or maybe David Bell falls, or there's how guys move up and down teams' boards between now and the draft. The odds are there's going to be one of those receivers that they really like will be there at 39.
Yeah, I mean, there's a few guys that are injured that may slip a little bit. Pickens, and then there's the kid from Bama. These guys all may fall in the draft, and we see it every year. The mock drafts start coming out. Oh, there's no way that guy will fall.
Right.
A lot of guys are going to fall. You can't have 56 first-round picks.
Well, that's like the kid from Michigan. The kid from Michigan tore his Achilles his pro day. He's going to fall.
That sucks. Yeah, that was terrible right there.
That really was.
Right. No, and to compliment that, Lester, last year nobody was thinking Justin Fields would be out of the top 8.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
All those mocks really were, he's going to be the second, third quarterback taken, and then obviously the Bears move up and get him where they did. But again, there's only so many picks and so many team needs that can be filled in the first round. So yeah, some of those guys are going to fall to the second. Is Olave going to fall to the second? No, but they'll find another receiver for him. It'll be okay.
So Lester, I had something I wanted to bounce off you. But before I do, did you guys know, I saw something today. Did you guys know that this is totally random? The Chargers are the only team in the NFL who hasn't had somebody arrested in the last 5 years.
Wow. That's I'm
really
not surprised. I mean,
I saw it today. The Chargers, they're the only team in the NFL that has nobody on their roster that's been arrested in the last 5 years.
Yeah, I saw something the other day to the effect that Devontae Adams was out there with the Raiders and he already got a DUI. So.
I saw that too. It was
that happened. I didn't see that.
No, he didn't get one.
No,
there was,
he didn't.
Somebody made a meme that said like that they gave up in the trade. It was like 2 first-round picks, blah blah blah. You get Devontae Adams and a DUI to be named later or something like that. But no, so I wanted to get your opinion. I've been trying to up my Twitter followers, so I've been out there trying to communicate a little more. And I seem to keep getting in these arguments with people about Eddie Jackson. And everybody says the dude's a bum. He can't play. We need to get rid of him. I'm in the court that I feel like if we get a strong safety that is a downhill in the box strong safety, and Eddie could go back to playing free safety where he's just looking to pick the ball off, I think he can go back to being one of those top safeties that we paid him to be. Am I just looking at it as a fan, or is there some basis there?
Eddie Jackson is a very polarizing topic, and it all started when he made that comment about anyone can tackle or something like that. It was kind of it was taken out of context,
right?
I mean, the gist of it, what he meant, I understand it. He wants to get the ball. He wants to take it away, and he hasn't done that lately. So,
right.
With Eddie Jackson, he's still very good in coverage. That's one thing he is pretty good at still. The takeovers, the picks, the forced fumbles, the recoveries, they're not there. He has to get that. He was paid that huge money to take the ball away. That's not happening. But like you're saying, if you get him in a good defense, for one, they're not trading him. He's not getting cut. The way the money's not really something you can move until at least I think 2 more years. So he's here for at least a couple years. He's a good fit. I mean, it's basically the back end is a version of the Tampa 2. Mm-hmm. He's a good fit for that defense. I think he's going to have a pretty good season this year.
See, I do know what I'm talking about.
You know what you're talking about.
I will say this. At times, I was frustrated as a fan seeing the lack of effort when it comes to tackling from Eddie Jackson last season. It's frustrating, right? You see a guy run right by him, and he doesn't even make an attempt to tackle him. And we saw that too many times as fans. But
aren't you an Alabama fan?
I am absolutely an Alabama
Didn't you
fan.
see Eddie Jackson play at Alabama and not tackle anybody?
I did, but that was college. I would have thought he learned by now.
You're not going to go to the NFL and suddenly become this great tackler.
He's not a physical player. He's not. He will make the occasional. Bills aren't the best, but he still had 75 tackles last year.
Right.
So, I mean, he's around the ball. He just understands there's some times where, again, it's a business decision. It's
I like
not
the way
ideal.
you put that.
Right.
But
hey, he has to do what he has to do. But at the end of the day, if he's making those type of decisions, but he has 5 or 6 picks and a bunch and a few touchdowns, Bears fans don't care.
You can live with it, right?
Now, while we're on the topic of safeties, Lester, do you think what are the odds? And I've seen it talked about a few different times, and I've been in some conversation about. Do you think there's any chance that the Bears go kick the tires on Tyrann Mathieu?
I mean, if there's a possibility, I think they would be open to it. But if you're him, wouldn't you rather go to a contender? He's 32 years old. You know what I mean? So I think it makes sense for the Bears. He feels a need position. But as far as the money goes, as far as him wanting to get a ring, I can't see it happening in Chicago.
No, not anytime soon. This team is in rebuild mode for the next 2 to 3 years minimum, I would say. Don't get me wrong. Poles could have a really great first 2 years and we could be a competitor in year 3, but I don't see this team going out and winning 10 or 12 games this season. I don't think
not this
season. No, I don't see this year. But I'm not ready to say it's going to be 3 years before they're contender. He's setting themselves to be a major player in a free agency next year. They're going to have a lot of cap
Yeah.
space and a lot of movable contracts where he can go after some of the best free agents.
Very true. So Lester touched on it a little bit already. He thinks they're going to go best player available and follow that formula that Poles has put out there. Lester, what's your opinion on Matt Eberflus as a coach? Obviously, we haven't seen him be a head coach for the Bears yet, but I really do like some of the things that he's saying. You know, his acronyms that he's came out with in the presser, and, you know, playing with the intensity. All 11 guys are going to be flying to the ball on defense. What do you think he brings to the team, I guess, that's going to be a strength over what Matt Nagy did as a coach?
I'll be honest. I mean, I was not a big fan of the hire at the time. I was looking forward towards one of those Brian Dable, Byron Leftwich, one of those guys on offense kind of come in. But, you know, once he came in, once he kind of, you know, had a chance to talk, and we had a chance to learn more about him and his philosophy, I think it's a great fit for the Bears. I think he's a defensive head coach, but he's not calling the D. You know, he is going to step back and be an overseer of the entire team. And I think that's what this team needs, because we saw Matt Nagy, you know, he came in billed as this big time guy in offense that really understands the scheme. And we saw none of the chief stuff come over with him. He came over, he had his own idea for an offense, and he ran what he wanted to do. And it was bad. It was bad for at least 2 years of really being bad. At least
tight end sweep on the goal line.
You know, just some really stupid stuff there. The hook routes, a lot of the stuff he did. You know, he didn't put his players in the best position to succeed. And that goes back to Mitch. You know, that goes back to what he was doing then too. I mean, it was the stuff with the tailbacks, the receivers. You know, not wanting to run the I formation. Just really stupid stuff where, you know what, your offense is not good. Do something to at least keep the ball away from the other team. And he just, you know, he wanted nothing to do with that. So just from the standpoint of no more Matt Nagy, this offense will be better. Justin Fields year 2, Luke Getsy's scheme coming over. You know, the Jenkins, you know, Borum. You know, some of the younger players are going to get a little better. And there's no way this team will be as bad as last year. It's just not going to.
You know, I think you see a lot too with. You know, and I know you hate this word, Tarble, but the collaboration between GM and coach, where we didn't see you never saw Ryan Pace go sign somebody and you were like, oh, he fits perfect in a Matt Nagy offense. You
because
know,
no one knows what the Matt Nagy offense is.
Not just the offense, like even the defense. They never went out and got somebody that you're like, oh, he fits what they're trying to do perfectly. You see that here. You see, you know, Poles comes over here, and what does he do? He gets a guy, Byron Pringle, who he's seen up close and personal. He knows him. He knows his strengths, his weaknesses. You know, you saw, I forget his name, but the lineman that came from Green Bay, that he came over here because
Lucas Patrick,
because Getsy's here. You know, you saw the defensive end they just signed. He said at the last second, I came here instead of the Colts because I wanted to go where Matt was. You know, you're seeing guys move around the league, want to come here because of who is here on the staff. And that's something you haven't seen in years past. You've seen, you know, guys that you thought made a lot of sense, like Kareem Hunt. You thought he made a lot of sense in a Matt Nagy offense. Didn't go get him. No. He went to Kansas City, you know, he went to Cleveland. You know, guys that you thought because of who the staff was, we would have a shot at. You're now seeing that, and they haven't even coached or played a game yet.
You know, it's funny you mentioned the collaboration. Yeah, that word is kind of it stings Bears fans, but it's true. I mean, the Bears, Pace went out and got Robert Quinn, who was not an outside linebacker. He was a hand in the dirt defenseman. That's where he had his most success. So he signs him. Pace goes out and signs Marquise Goodwin, Demir Bird, you know, these small, shifty, really fast receivers, and Matt Nagy runs, you know, 20 hook routes a game. You know, why are you adding pieces to the puzzle that doesn't fit? With Ryan Poles, with Matt Eberflus, so far we're seeing him bring in guys that fit the Getsy scheme. He fits the Tampa 2 scheme. We're seeing him actually put a plan together, and now we'll have to see what happens on you know, once they get to the field. But man, so far I like the offseason that's happening for the Bears.
I would agree. For sure. I definitely don't want to see any more curl or hooks or comeback routes. Obviously,
Stagnant
we're gonna
routes,
see a few,
keep these
but
guys on the move, right?
Right.
exactly.
Absolutely.
You're
Especially with a
throwing
quarterback like Justin Fields and even Mitch before him. Mitch moves pretty good too. You didn't see any of that. I really like the Morrow signing. I think because I do think that Roquan's going to get moved to the will. So, that's a guy that allows that to happen seamlessly because he'll now slide into where Roquan was if that's the decision they make. But I thought that was a really good get. I thought he fits what Matt Eberflus runs on defense really, really well. And I thought it was a good move. The guys he brought with him are guys that know his defense and can run his defense. Like you said, he can be a head coach. He doesn't have to call the defense. He doesn't have to call the offense. He's a guy that he's going to make sure that the team is doing what they're supposed to do. We've seen time after time after time, the defense, whether it's offsides, personal fouls, whatever it is, and Matt Nagy's nowhere to be found. He's with the quarterback. Talk about the offense. And this guy, I know you have position coaches, but there's something to be said for a head coach disciplinarian who's going to make sure that this team is disciplined and is going to do what they're supposed to do.
So 2 questions regarding people who are no longer with the Bears anymore. One, is Patrick Mahomes a less, how do I say this? Does Patrick Mahomes decline next year because Matt Nagy's his quarterback's coach?
No.
I mean, Patrick Mahomes said that Nagy had a big reason why he had success early on. So I think Matt Nagy's in a good place right now. He is probably going to max himself out as a quarterback coach. He may get a gig calling plays at some point in the future, but I think right now Matt Nagy is a position coach. That's probably where he'll end up being the rest of his career.
I think Matt Nagy ends his career in Kansas City. I think he is. It's a good fit for him. Andy Reid is gonna do what Andy Reid does, and he's going to take care of his people, and Matt's one of his guys. I think he's going to take care of Matt, and Matt will just be there, and he's got a pretty good gig being a quarterback coach for Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I would agree. That was more of a joke than a question.
But if nothing else, at least, not to defend him too much, but at least Matt Nagy is the guy that made Kansas City go draft Patrick Mahomes. He was the one who first saw him on film and said, we have to go get this guy. So at least he did have that.
Okay, fair enough. Question 2. Mitchell Trubisky is going to be the starter of the Pittsburgh Steelers
No, he's not.
week 1.
No.
We'll see what they do in the draft. I mean, there's a chance that, the money's not huge that they signed him to. So I saw someone on my timeline, I forget who it was. They said that, what if Mitch gets Glennoned? That they actually, they sign him is like a big smoke screen, and then they actually trade up and draft and pick the guy in the draft. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it happen. But I'm a fan of Mitch. I want to see Mitch succeed. The fact that he's there now is fine. He's not in the same conference as the Bears. I hope he does good.
Right.
I have my doubts just because of the stuff I saw on film. But hey, quarterbacks grow at a later stage than many other positions. So maybe the mental side of it will sink in at some point. We'll have to see it on the field, though.
I'm interested.
I don't think he's the starter week 1. I don't think he ever starts a game for Pittsburgh.
Well, right now he's the best guy there. The other guy, the other guy's awful.
Look, if from what I saw to Mitch, I would be surprised if Dwayne Haskins won the job.
Oh, come on!
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far.
Haskins wouldn't go that far.
But no, I think Pittsburgh ultimately takes somebody in the draft. They were huge. I know they were huge in the pro day and took him out to dinner right after of Malik Willis. I think that's the route they go. I think they ultimately will draft somebody. Who starts week 1. That I don't know. It's too early to tell. But I don't think that now that he's away from Nagy, I still don't think Mitch is a starting quarterback in the NFL. I just don't. There's too many things I saw on film that can't be because of Matt Nagy. Like, you can't blame Matt Nagy for Mitch running sideways, and instead of throwing the ball out of bounds, he steps out of bounds for a 5-yard loss. Like, you that's not something that you're coached to do.
Situational
like, you can't tell me that was Matt Nagy who made him do stuff like that. Or, I don't buy the fact that it was Matt Nagy that made him stop running. I don't. I think Mitch made a business decision that he got hurt running the ball against Minnesota, and he decided, well, I'm going to stay in the pocket now. I just don't believe he's a starting quarterback in the NFL, with or without Matt Nagy.
It's yet to be seen, but my question wasn't if Mitch was going to be the starter week 1, because I believe he is.
Yeah.
But my question was going to be, what does he look like without Matt Nagy? And I guess you kind of already
The same guy.
gave your opinion on this, Vince. But, Matt Nagy was trying to, in my opinion, very much fit a square peg into a round hole with Mitch. He was not doing anything schematically that helped him whatsoever.
I will agree to that.
And because of that, I think you have to at least be a little bit interested to see what the guy does in a new team, new system. You've got an awesome running back over there who played for an amazing college.
Here we go.
No, but in all reality, Matt Nagy's gone out of the picture, obviously. Mitch is over in Pittsburgh. He's kind of suits what they need. I mean, really, Mitch and Big Ben over the last 3 years had the same noodle arm that Mitch has, right? But Mitch can run. Mitch can at least get around the weak offensive line. So I think schematically, if they let Mitch use his legs, he has 800 rushing yards.
If he's willing to run.
Yeah, it's going to be a very different offense, because you mentioned with Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, he was a strictly a pocket passer,
right?
Yeah, the ball was out so fast with him. He was so smart with the ball in his hands. Mitch will. We should see more of the rollout stuff with him.
Right.
Get him on the move. Cut the field in half for him. I think if you do that, I think you have a chance to win some games in Pittsburgh. But that's a tough division. The whole AFC is tough.
The really, honestly, all jokes aside, I think the biggest thing that will be a not downfall, but like a detriment to Mitch is that probably their best receiver, Chase Claypool, his best strength is running by people and being open downfield, where I think Mitch struggles with the deep ball. So I think he does it. I don't think that fits well for his game, and they don't really have the other receivers. They lost Juju Smith-Schuster. They lost a couple, James Washington. So you lost a couple guys. It'll be interesting to see who all the receivers are in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, absolutely. I had to touch on it because, we had so many fired up debates over the years with Mitch when we were first doing our show, man. I think that's all we argued about for the longest time.
Every week.
That was all of Bears Twitter, all of Bears.
Right.
That was
absolutely
the comment section at our site. It was so controversial. The whole Mitch, very polarizing topic.
Yeah, I say he's one of the most polarizing topics in that Chicago sports is seeing. Like you said, it was every single Bears show was always about Mitch.
Always.
Right.
And the littlest things, like even like when that week came where he had that interview where he said something about turning the TVs off at Hallis Hall, like then that became like every single thing that Mitch did became so huge.
That it did. With that being said, though, I got 2 more questions before we let Lester go. Number 1, Justin Fields. Let me rephrase this. Number 1, is Justin Fields the future of this franchise, or is it too early to tell?
I think he better be. I mean, it seems too early to tell at this point. I think the franchise still believes in him, obviously. I think Ryan Poles believes in him. I think the head coach believes him. I mean, I think he was a big draw for these guys to want to be in Chicago.
Right.
Yeah.
But he still has to prove it on the field. I mean, he has to make some steps here. There was a lot of positive last year.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest, there's a lot of negative too. So he has to clean. Yeah, he has to clean some stuff up in his game, And I think that he has showed his entire career as for the college, for high school. He always works on what he needs to work on.
Mm-hmm.
This entire offseason, he is in the lab working on what he has to work on. He knows what he has to do, and he's going to come out and he's going to have a pretty nice year, I believe.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I was at the Bears 49ers game on Halloween. My dad's a 49ers fan, so I took him out there first time at Soldier Field. We had a great time. But, man, the way that entire stadium lit up when Justin Fields on 4th and
that run, right?
16 or whatever it was,
juked
his way all the way through and ran in for the touchdown. I've I've heard Soldier Field be very loud. That was one of the loudest moments, aside from the double doink, that I've ever been a part of at Soldier Field.
Yeah, I think that's part of what everybody's been waiting for. Like that was part of the hype about drafting him was, okay, we got a guy that, like Lester said, there was a lot of good. There was a lot of bad too, but you at least saw flashes where you're like, okay, that's the guy we drafted. Yeah. That's why we moved up to get this kid. And despite our previous arguments and sides we've taken on it, I will admit I think Matt Nagy did absolutely nothing to help Justin Fields and did quite a bit to counter, his production.
Yeah, you run the same exact game plan that you had instilled for Andy Dalton against the Cleveland Browns, and get this guy eaten up by a short sleeve shirtless Myles Garrett.
So I think we're gonna see him on the rollouts and the getting him on the move and letting Justin just play and not have to dissect a defense every play as a rookie like we saw this past year. He's going to be put in a position where he is set up to succeed. So that being said, I think we're going to see a big year out of Justin Fields. And by big year, maybe not the production, maybe not the wins, but I think we're going to see a lot more good than bad that we see.
We'll see the growth. The growth will be for sure. That's what we're going to see.
Absolutely. And I think that's the most important this year.
Yeah, as long as you see that trajectory going up and you see him moving in the right direction, cutting down on the fumbles for one, that's a big thing for me.
I think it's one of those things where at the end of the year, you don't have to say, okay, this guy is definitely a franchise top 10 quarterback in the league. But I think at the end of this year, you have to be able to not say, okay, he's not.
Yeah.
As long as that, like you said, that arrow is pointing up and he's playing well, that's what we're looking for.
Now, to wrap this question session up, one last thing, Lester, before we let you go. If you're Ryan Poles, who specifically is the one player that you want to steal out of this draft that you think is attainable for the Bears? I know you said best player available, but who's that one name for you that really sticks out right now that you think the Bears could go get?
There's an offensive tackle from Tulsa. His name escapes me right now, but I've been watching some stuff on him. Just a real mean, nasty, ornery guy. Smith, I believe, maybe is that his name? Come on, guys, you guys are drafting.
I know who you're talking about.
Who you're talking about.
That's him.
Yeah, he's a guy. I mean, I think the Bears got to get. It'd be nice to get a receiver. But I think a guy at wideout's going to be there. There's going to be quality.
Yep.
But if they can pull a guy that, but then again, now what do you do with Tevin Jenkins? I think Jenkins can play tackle, but they may see him more at guard. I think a lot will be decided about the roster here, as free agency wraps up, because you still got to bring some guys in. At some
Tyler
point,
Smith is his name.
Yeah, Tyler Smith. He just, he plays the game the way that Ryan Poles likes his guy to play, and I think Ryan Poles wants to build this offensive line in his image. And that's why that's why he's bringing in something like a guy like Patrick. That's why he let Daniels go.
Right.
He wants guys that are kind of pricks. Basically, that's what he wants. He wants guys. He wants guys that will get after it. That will take up for his QB, and that's what he wants. So I think a guy like that would be fun. As for me, because that's what I like. But as far as the receivers go, there's like 4 or 5 receivers I think that they're going to get there that should be waiting for them at the second round pick.
Okay. I really hope they get Christian Watson. I really want
Watson's
him.
A good guy, yeah, too.
Watson would be a quality pick.
He's a big, fast target.
Yeah.
Yep. That's one thing that we didn't even touch on. James Daniels is no longer a Bear.
Meh.
That was a tough pill for me to swallow.
Why? What did he do? Don't be one of these fans that just falls in love with somebody because they were here.
No, he's young. He's a developmental player. You saw him. Don't get me wrong. He's not one of the best linemen in football, but you
see. Then I don't want him. I want all my linemen to be best linemen in football.
Well, of course you do, but you're not going to have that really.
So then why settle for less?
I think there was more upside with it, Daniels. At least keep him as a backup, in my opinion. But
you weren't going to keep him as a backup. He got paid like a starter.
Yeah, I mean, for the money, I understand why he left. I also see why the Bears let him go. again, Ryan Poles wants to create this line in his image. He has a specific player in mind. And while James Daniels fit the speed and the athleticism for the spot, he didn't have the right type of mental makeup. I'm not saying that he couldn't do it, but he just wants a guy that's more, get up in your face.
Yeah.
And James Daniels kind of laid back. He did his job. I thought Daniels was very good. I was hoping they would re-sign him, but when they let him go, then you have to understand why. And that's the why behind it.
Makes sense.
And I think he's a guy that they, previous regimes drafted him, seeing, well, he could play this, he could play that. He so far he showed that he can't play center. And that's the guy that kept saying his best position is center. But every time he's there, I thought that was one of his weaknesses was playing center, But he could go to Pittsburgh and play it absolutely great. Probably not, because they're probably going to Mitch behind him. But so I mean, he's good. He was all right while he was here. Like I wouldn't have been upset if they re-signed him.
Yeah,
but
consistent. He's solid. Yeah. He's a solid guy. But at the end of the day, it makes sense to move on. You're bringing a guy like
especially I thought Pittsburgh they paid to get him to come there.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I would say that's fair. With that being said, Lester, we appreciate you taking the time, as always, to jump on here with us. Spent a lot of time with us chatting Bears tonight, so we definitely appreciate it. And why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and leave us with that?
I'm on Twitter at Wiltfong JR. The site, of course, is Windy City Gridiron. Podcast channel over that too. We got our YouTube channel is actually called Second City Gridiron. That's the video home to our podcast channel.
Okay.
We're doing a bunch of stuff where if we're doing just like you guys now, we're trying to step our game up. So we got a whole bunch of stuff out there: podcast, video, written word. We do it all.
Absolutely. Be sure to go check out what Lester and his team are doing over there at Windy City Gridiron.
Hell yeah,
Lester,
they do it
again,
all and
as
they
always,
do it well.
It's a pleasure, and we appreciate it. We'll talk soon.
We'll talk to you guys. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks, Lester.
Man, always great Bears conversation when we get Lester Wiltfong on the show.
Hell yeah. Every time I talk Bears with Lester, I feel like I want more.
Yeah, I know. We could have kept him here all night, but realistically,
hell yeah. Easily.
Realistically, it's already almost 8:30, and
right.
Want to be mindful of his time.
We appreciate Lester and Daniel for coming on with us and giving us such good good Bears talk and Bulls talk with Daniel as well.
It was a very good start there talking Bulls, and then the transition to Bears was nice. I've been meaning to talk some Bears. Obviously I'm talking to the guys at work about the Bears, but
right.
When we start chalking it up and arguing about Mitch Trubisky and Matt Nagy and all the bullshit that's behind us, I just get fired up. I get happy. I'm ready for this new season, man. And the Bears are playing the 49ers in Chicago again.
Right.
I saw on the schedule, so I'm sure.
If everything goes where we think it is, we'll get to see Justin Fields versus Trey Lance.
Exactly. I'm sure me and the old man are going to roll out there and see that one. So I'm excited for what the season's going to bring, man.
Yeah.
I think there's more positive. There's a more positive atmosphere around this
absolutely
than there has been.
Well, I think a lot of that is, whether it was very openly debated if Matt Eberflus was the right guy for the job. But I think everybody at this point, no matter what side of the argument you were on, I think at this point you're liking what you're seeing.
Yeah, and you're at least willing to give him a chance, right? He's a guy that he comes in and says all the right things, and then
absolutely
you kind of sit back and think for a minute and go, oh, what he's saying is making a lot of sense. And yes,
well, I think Ryan Poles too. Like I said earlier, I think big thing with him, it's easy to give them the benefit of the doubt because they're being so transparent.
Yeah,
like he's telling you ahead of time, look, I'm not going to go sign a bunch of guys in to start a free agency, so don't even expect it because it's not going to happen.
And then he followed through. He did exactly what he said he would do. Right?
You don't find yourself, at least myself, I don't find myself sitting there going, well, why didn't the Bears go get this guy? Why didn't the Bears go get that guy?
Right.
Where I think in years past, it was that open window of free agency. You were like, well, why didn't you go get that guy? Well, the Bears should go get that guy. Well, I think there's a lot of moves that they've made that are going under the radar because they're not big names. Well, those weren't the names they were after. And I think there's a lot of guys that have fallen too. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if, maybe not Tyrann Mathieu, but a guy like Landon Collins, You know, Landon Collins is still young. He's exactly what the Bears need, that downhill in the box safety. You know, maybe nobody signs him. Maybe they get him. You know, you need help in the secondary. You need multiple guys. Maybe a guy like Patrick Peterson, who's still a free agent. Maybe he goes for cheap. You know, if you can get a guy who's a veteran to come in at not a lot of money, it could speed up the rebuild, because now you've got a guy who can, you know, Jalen Johnson is learning on his own. There's nobody there teaching Jalen Johnson how to be a cornerback in the NFL.
And
he's doing all that on his own. Yeah, absolutely he is. So if you can get a guy like Patrick Peterson or somebody of that, you know, that veteran
to be more of a role model,
teach him some new things, help speed up the learning curve between, you know, Jalen Johnson. I meant to ask Lester about him, and I totally forgot, and it's gonna piss me off that I didn't ask him. But you know, I thought, well, the little bit we saw out of Thomas Graham last year, I thought he looked like he could be a future, you know, part of the future secondary for the Bears. Maybe not that number 2, but you know, maybe it's the starting nickel, maybe it's, you know, some spot in the defense, you know. So if you can get a veteran in here who can teach these guys faster than learning on their own, you know, especially if it's not going to cost a lot, you know, he's now past that first free agency window. If he makes it out of the second window, he's going to wind it to get a guy like him or Landon Collins or, you know, from my mouth to God's ear, Tyrann Mathieu. You know, to get one of these guys, it's going to be that the second window is going to close, and it's going to be like, oh shit, he's still not signed by anybody. I got to
go somewhere.
Right, he's not signed by anybody. Nobody's really calling, hey, why don't you come play for us?
Right.
You know, it's gonna. That's the only formula.
Deal.
Right. That's the only formula where you're going to get a guy like that. So if you can get somebody where you don't have to rely just on the draft, it helps things along. But I like where they're at. I like knowing where the ship is headed. Like, I feel like for the first time in a long time, you can look at this team and go, okay, this is where they're trying to go. This is who they're trying to be, right? Like the entire regime of Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy, I felt the Bears never had a identity. You know, where they haven't even played a game yet, and I feel like we already know who this Bears team is going to be. They're going to be a team that plays physical,
aggressive team.
Right? They're going to be fast. They're going to be aggressive on defense. They're going to be 11 helmets hitting that ball. You know, on offense, you're going to have an offensive line that's going to protect their quarterback. You know, we saw last year. You know that I forget which game it was, but the towards the end of the year, the Justin Fields incident where he took that late hit and he had to help himself up off the ground. That's not going to be who this Bears team is this year.
Right.
You know, and I'm good with that. I like where we're headed. I like the moves that have been made. I like the Khalil Mack move because you weren't going to contend while you still had Khalil Mack. And if you're not going to contend, you might as well get something. And like we talked about, would I have liked a first-round pick? Absolutely. But the Chargers weren't going to give you their first-round pick and take the contract. It just wasn't going to happen.
And
not as high as their
contract. That's the key in that whole situation. Is that they?
So I like everything that's been done so far. A lot, and if we keep Robert Quinn, I'm good with that because, like Lester said, he's a 4-3 hand in the dirt defensive end. Like he played out of position last year and had 18 sacks.
Put him in position and see him get over 20, hopefully.
Right. Like the guy.
Only time will tell, right?
Right. Absolutely. So,
no. With that being said, man, it's been great to be back.
Great to be back.
Tuesday nights feel a little bit more complete when we're bullshitting about sports. So,
hell yeah. I've been talking football with Melissa because I haven't had nobody else to talk to. And she keeps rubbing my face. She's a Broncos fan, and they just got Russell Wilson. So, you know.
Yeah,
she's all high and mighty.
Good time for Broncos fans, I guess, man. Only to be seen if they really won that trade, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, not to go too far in depth into it, but even like we were talking about earlier, when you feel you have to make a move, like Cleveland did for Watson. I mean, you look at what Denver gave up for Russell Wilson. You better win a championship while you have him. Otherwise, it was a waste. because for what you gave up, you've set the bar that high. Like that's the only thing that will. But you see what they're already gaining from it. Like Randy Gregory says, well, he was going back to Dallas, and then he took the same contract from Denver. Well, Russell Wilson called me 8 times the first night free agency opened. It has a little more cachet when Russell Wilson calls you and says, hey, I think you make our football team better than when Mitch Trubisky calls you and says, hey, I think you make our team better.
I'll overthrow you by 10 yards.
Right.
But
so I'm super excited to be back. It was a long, much longer than we thought process, with everything that happened, but I'm feeling good now and glad to be back.
Absolutely, man. I couldn't agree more. Great show. Again, thank you to our guests, both Daniel Goodwin and Lester Wiltfong Jr.
Yes, go follow both of them right now.
Yes, tremendous follows, great football minds. Be sure to follow, like, and subscribe to the Twitter as well as the YouTube to get all of our show notifications as we continue to go forward here on the undefeated. God damn,
undefeated. I got you. The
undefeated sports network. Man, it's been a long day. With that being said, guys, you have a good night, and we'll see you all next week.